The other big players, Scottish and Southern, EDF, N-Power and E.ON, will simply do the same. Consumers are told to shop around, but that's hard if prices are all going in one direction.
British Gas customers are going to take a hit on this today, but there's a real concern that where they go, everybody else will follow, so probably nobody's going to be immune to that, and that's the sad fact.
The Energy Secretary Chris Huhne said today's increases were tough for consumers. He's promising to heat up competition by bringing in more suppliers. Simon Gompertz, BBC News.
British aid agencies are to broadcast an appeal for donations to help 10 million people at risk of starvation in East Africa. The drought, believed to be the worst in 60 years, has hit large areas of Kenya, Somalia and Ethiopia. The appeal will also include South Sudan, which is set to become the world's newest country tomorrow. Well, in a moment, we'll hear from Mike Waldridge, who's in Dolo Ado on the Ethiopian side of the border. But first, this report from Ben Brown, who's in the Dadaab refugee camp in Kenya.
Dadaab is a dusty, desolate place, but the drought is forcing thousands of refugees to flock here. The infants are the weakest of the new arrivals. There's not much of them to measure. 100. Tiny bodies ravaged by malnutrition and dehydration. Katerina Andre is a Swiss nurse here. She told me that recently she cried with one mother.
Just babies, young children are dying. It happened to me last week. I arrived outside the health post. I saw a crowded area. I went there and the baby was just dying, so I took it. I tried to do something, but outside you cannot do anything, so he just died in my arms.
Katerina knows this little boy is also hovering between life and death. His mother agrees to take him to hospital, but only reluctantly. She has 5 more children to care for and was prepared to let this one die, a sacrifice to save the others.
We had some problems with some instances where some families have already prepared the children for death. So we had to intervene and tell them, no, this is not possible. This child is still alive and he can make it.
This camp is growing all the time. It's becoming increasingly overcrowded and insanitary as well. Aid agencies here are stretched to the very limit, and more people are arriving with every day that passes. Well over 1,000 of them fleeing from civil war and now from drought as well in their native Somalia. No one here has any intention of going home anytime soon. But aid is making a difference here. On Monday, we showed these pictures of a chronically malnourished baby called Abdi Noor. This is him now. His doctors say he's out of danger and gradually growing stronger. Amid the misery, there is also hope. Ben Brown, BBC News, Dadaab.
For these Somalis and the 2,000 others now arriving every day, Ethiopia is their nearest place of refuge. Habiba Abdi came with 7 of her children today. A hazardous, grueling 6-day walk behind them. The youngest child, a 3-year-old, left behind for fear he would slow down the others. And there are many people after us coming this way, Habiba says. Aulio's little son Mahmoud, 9 months old, has a circumference of his arm checked by a health worker. The red measure shows a case of severe acute malnutrition. The rate of severe malnutrition among the children is alarming. The biggest problem for aid workers here at the moment is simply keeping pace with the numbers pouring in from across the border just down the track there, and in particular with screening them and making sure that those who are most at risk of not surviving their ordeal get the help they need most urgently.
We see children with respiratory infection.
The UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Antonio Guterres, came here to see what needed to be done to scale up the response. It was obvious from the desperation of many of the refugees that not enough was being done. But as well as the long-running drought, they're fleeing the conflict that's made it so difficult to get aid to them in Somalia. That, said the High Commissioner, must have higher priority.
It is inside Somalia that this must be stopped. It is solving the conflict problem and bringing humanitarian aid to Somalia that we can mitigate this enormous humanitarian disaster.
For now, the refugee camps here in this remote corner of Ethiopia are filling as fast as they're being opened. Shelter and water supplies are growing pressure points by the day, and no one knows how many more Somalis will cross this border. Mike Woolridge, BBC News, Dolo Ado, southeastern Ethiopia.
And we just interrupt this to take you to Lewisham in southeast London, where Andy Coulson, the Prime Minister's former Director of Communications, let's hear him speak.
As I've been offering to do for the last few months.
Just want to say, David Cameron's press conference this morning, I was watching it. I was also watching Twitter, and almost immediately Ed Miliband tweeted his response. It's a completely different dynamic, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it just opens up the playing field for everyone, and also it does allow, you know, sort of cheeky interventions into other people's scripted news events like that. I think it's, you know, it's really interesting to see, you know, politicians, you know, members of the press, commentators of all sorts, but also the general public actually intervening. I mean, it goes, you know, that sort of behaviour we're seeing, you know, not just in news events like this, but during, you know, televisual events, you know, like The Apprentice and various other TV shows, where people are, you know, joining in the conversation in real time as these events are happening.
You mentioned that the brands, and of course that wave of brands saying we're not going to advertise in the news of the world, which some think precipitated the collapse. Is that completely new? Is there something fresh we're seeing?
I think it's, I'm not saying it's completely new, but I think the speed that it happened was amazing. And I think this is the first time those brands, you know, will have had to deal with a crisis like this. I mean, you know, in effect, each of those brands that were advertising quite heavily in the news of the world experienced their own crisis over the last few days as they became under, you know, increasing pressure, both on their own Facebook pages, where normally they're, you know, conducting a nice little marketing conversation with their customers, that suddenly had to deal with this process as it happened, and also out there in the wilds of Twitter. And I'm fairly sure that those brands will have listened, and actually that really did impact their decision to pull out.
Just very quickly, Robin, who do you think has got social media out of the politicians, the public figures we're seeing here, the News International, Ed Miliband, David Cameron? Have any of them actually got it?
That's a very good question. I think I would actually point to Tom Watson, you know, who's obviously been involved in this, you know, for a long time, and actually helped drive this forward. And I'd say if you look back at him historically, the way he's behaved in social media, I'd say he's one of the few politicians that really understand it from a, you know, from a dynamic sense in terms of the way actually people interact and behave, as opposed to just using it for marketing purposes.
Vociferous critic of News International, and certainly revelled in the past few days. Robin Grant, thank you for your opinions.
Okay, thank you.
Now, in other news, British aid agencies are to broadcast an appeal for donations to help 10 million people at risk of starvation in East Africa. The drought, believed to be the worst in 60 years, has hit large areas of Kenya, Somalia and Ethiopia. The charity Merlin's country director of Somalia and Kenya, Louise Patterson, joins us now. Louise, thank you very much indeed for coming in. You've just come back from Nairobi. If you would, just begin by telling us what you saw there, what your experiences were there.
Actually, I'm based there all of the time, working in Kenya and Somalia, and the situation on the ground is absolutely desperate. It's critical. As you mentioned, there's 10 million people affected across the 3 countries, and it's the situation is awful. They're saying that it's the worst situation that's ever been seen in the last 60 years.
And from what you're seeing, you know, with your own eyes, does it seem that way to you? Are you seeing people leaving their homes, crops failing, animals dying, and all these horrible things that we've been hearing about?
I mean, livestock is absolutely devastated. There are villages where, because Merlin have been on the ground there for the last 12 years, and there's villages where we have worked with communities who, you know, 4 months ago had 100 camels, and now the last remaining camel is standing. And they're pastoralist people, so they completely depend upon livestock. If they have no livestock, they have no milk, they have no food, and they have no livelihoods. And children are the worst thing is that, you know, last month, because we've known this is coming, you know, everyone has been watching La Nina and the effects of La Nina and what is going. We've known what the impact is going to be, but haven't expected that the situation would be as bad as what it is. You know, some of the figures we have, there's 37% of people are at risk of acute malnutrition, are at risk of dying from hunger. And so if you think about that, that's 1 in 3 people are at risk of dying from not having any food.
We're hearing that even before this Disasters Emergency Committee appeal, British people have donated £1 million in the last week or so. That's obviously very encouraging when you look at that sort of generosity. And I know people are hard-pressed economically at the moment, but what would you say to people to encourage them to give money to that appeal?
I think it's absolutely wonderful news, and I know people in the aid industry hadn't expected that, because they are concerned that, you know, everyone is strapped for cash now. But, you know, the British people are known throughout the world of being extremely generous, both in terms of finance and in terms of spirit and heart. And you've seen the pictures. You know, it's all too real. This is not hype, and 10 million people are at risk. And only with the generosity of the British public continuing to care and to give money for these people will they be able to survive.
OK, Louise, thank you very much, Louise Patterson there from Merlin. And you can see a trail, an advert for the Disasters Emergency Committee appeal just before 8 o'clock.
Now, the 135th and final Space Shuttle mission has taken off today. We can go live to the Kennedy Space Centre, where Pallab Ghosh saw what we are bound, I think, to call the final countdown. Pallab, did it get off OK, and what was it like?
It did get off OK. It was a day of high drama because although you can see blue...
Leave to cool.
The launch of Atlantis, the final mission of the shuttle fleet. But just at the last moment, NASA engineers decided the weather was good enough to begin the countdown clock. And so the excitement generated, it gathered, and then there was another twist. At 31 seconds to go, the countdown clock stopped because of a last-minute fault. Shoulders were dropping, everyone's spirits were flagging, and then it restarted. And then we saw Atlantis thunder off into the sky with a flash of lightning. It was an amazing experience, particularly as it was the last ever mission. And as the space shuttle set off, the NASA commentator said, "On the shoulders of the shuttle, the dream continues." And those words were chosen because, of course, when Atlantis returns, America won't have any independent means of sending Americans into space. It has no replacement for the shuttle. Plans for a replacement vehicle are unclear, and many think that they're not yet affordable.
Pallab Ghosh, enjoying the amazing sight of the space shuttle taking off for the last time. Thank you.
OK, let's remind you of the headlines, and the time is almost 10 to 8.
Here we have the marinated chicken. It's been in overnight. It's gone wonderfully deep purple. Now move on to the other fundamental coq au vin ingredients. Oh, the smell is wonderful. While the bacon is sizzling, dry the chicken, season lightly, and flour. The flour that sticks to this gives a nice crust, but it also thickens the sauce as it cooks in the red wine. Now, the best way when you want to remove the fat from something is to just put your pan on a tilt and it all drains down. It's actually a method I also use for when I make bacon and eggs of a weekend morning. I really want to eat one of these now, but I'm not going to. Now fry the chicken, but take your time. Do be brave with not turning the chicken too quickly. You want this crust to form on the chicken. And if you turn it too quickly, what will happen is the flour will stick to the bottom of the pot and leave the chicken bare again. You know, it won't have its nice floury coating. Very nice. This is gorgeous. Cook the mushrooms and shallots separately with some butter. I'm going to add a couple of bay leaves, add the shallots, mushrooms and bacon to the chicken. It's the sauce that makes this coq au vin so delicious. For even more flavour, I add a splash of brandy. But just like the wine, don't forget to burn off the harsh alcohol. But take care. It's a good idea to put the bay leaves in after, actually. Go out. That'll do. Right, in with the marinade. Lovely. On with the lid. And in there for about an hour. Tricks I learned as a chef can be done easily at home, especially when it comes to presentation. A little bit of geometry going on here, see if I can get them all on. Bingo. Fried bread dipped in some chopped parsley is the classic French garnish and a delicious finishing touch.